My 30-year-old teacher Abby and I crossed lines I never expected at 18 confessions, kisses, and secret rendezvous. I want to kiss you, she admitted while I battled my feelings. This isn't a movie. Now, with her husband pursuing kids, I face losing my first love. What happens next? Before you say anything, this is all with consent. I met Abby at the school I attend, and amusingly enough, perhaps you have guessed it, she is my teacher. She is an attractive, funny, and compassionate woman with a good heart. We initially began conversing during sessions where we discussed my personal issues, some of which were quite serious, such as being thrown out of my house for an entire night and having to sleep in a bush to avoid being seen as a younger man on the street, particularly at 2 a.m. Abby provided me with her phone number so I could text her whenever something happened or if I needed to share what was on my mind. However, I preferred to email her since texting felt like an invasion of her privacy, not mine but hers. During one session, I inquired about her life, asking, "What about you? How are you doing?" She did not expect that, as no one she assisted had ever asked her that before. She opened up about her past, which I will not detail here to respect her privacy. On New Year's, I sent her a message wishing her a happy new year, to which she replied an hour later, unfortunately sharing that she had suffered a miscarriage. I tried to assure her that everything would be okay, encouraging her to spend time with her family and focus on other things, and promised we would talk again when we returned to school. A month later, we had another session. I was the one who always reached out to see if she had time for one, and we discovered our shared interest in UFC, the sport of mixed martial arts. That evening, I sent her a TikTok edit featuring some UFC fighters. The following day was Saturday, and I woke up quite late between 12 and 1 p.m. to find her messages. I responded, and she replied immediately. For 3 hours, we texted continuously, and it felt like only 20 minutes had passed. This pattern of texting continued over the next few days. At one point, she went to a club with her friends. Teachers do that too. I was texting her to check if she was okay since it opened at midnight, and she had to take a train at 7 a.m. to go back to her town. It was over the weekend, so I could afford to stay up late to ensure she arrived at the club safely with her friends. Keep in mind that I was aware she had a husband, who was supposed to accompany her to the club with her friends but ultimately decided not to go. Nobody knew that Abby was communicating with another guy. Let's not forget that I was her student. At 2 a.m., I could no longer keep my eyes open, so I texted her to enjoy herself and mentioned that I had to go to sleep. The next morning, I checked the messages and saw a deleted message along with one stating, "I got home." Around 7 a.m., I knew she was still out since she usually sent me a good morning text by that time, which she had not done. When she woke up, I asked if she had a good time and what the deleted message was about. She brushed it off, saying it was something insignificant. The next day, we began texting again, and she mentioned a secret regarding a gay teacher who had an intimate relationship with his student years ago at the same school. The student turned out to be the cousin of one of my classmates, John, who probably had no idea about it. I became suspicious about why she brought that up, but her playful demeanor, combined with my inexperience and virginity, kept me highly engaged in the conversation. She requested that I not analyze it too deeply, but I did, and I still regret saying, "Are we going to have sex?" There was a lengthy pause, and embarrassment washed over me. I regretted asking that and suggested we should do our own things and get some sleep since it was dinner time anyway. She reassured me that it was okay and that I shouldn't feel bad, but agreed that we should end the conversation for that day. However, she confessed that the deleted message while she was at the club was a desire to kiss me. The next day, I merely texted her a good morning and refrained from further messaging, likely due to my embarrassment. In the evening, she texted to check if everything was okay. She called me an hour later, but I did not answer, not because I didn't want to, but because I was speaking with my parents. I texted her back, stating that I was fine and asked if she was okay, but she didn't respond. The following day was a school day and I was sick, which was true. I decided to call her before she arrived at school, knowing her schedule. She explained that she thought I was joking with my friends about getting close to the attractive teacher, as you might understand, but I assured her that I would never do that. It was a silly misunderstanding. We both laughed about how foolish we were, and she quickly returned to her cheerful self, as did I. A few days later, we reached a point where she hesitantly texted me that her husband would be gone for 3 days during the summer and asked if I wanted to hang out outside of school. I responded somewhat foolishly with sure, trying to maintain an air of mystery and nonchalance. 2 days later, I followed up and suggested meeting that weekend or whenever she was free, surprising her, but she agreed. We met up, drove around a bit in her car, and parked in a secluded area to talk. It was evident that she was very nervous, while I found myself surprisingly calm. Eventually, we found ourselves staring into each other's eyes, and she suddenly said, "Do it." I hesitated as nerves took over. I was incredibly shy. She repeated it a couple of times, "Do it," and I realized she meant I should kiss her. Despite my strong desire to do so, shyness held me back. I suggested she could assist me, so she leaned her head on my shoulder and complimented my bracelets. In that moment, I lifted her chin and went in for the kiss. We kissed passionately for approximately 15 minutes. It was an intense and beautiful experience. Unfortunately, she had to leave shortly afterward, but she texted me about feeling an indescribable sensation and how hot it had been, and I echoed her sentiments. I felt elated, more confident, and only Abby and I knew what had occurred. The following week, we scheduled a second date, which unexpectedly led me to ask if I could see her breasts and ultimately if she would perform oral sex on me. I have no idea where that confidence came from, and it's worth noting that this was her first time even on the second date. Our connection transcended a mere relationship. We bonded emotionally and through shared life experiences despite her being 12 years older, which did not change anything for either of us. Months went by, and we engaged in sexual intimacy and numerous sleepovers, an astonishing feat considering her husband and others suspected nothing. During one of those sleepovers, we became emotional, and she confided that she still wished to become a mother and intended to undergo a procedure that summer, which was only 2–3 months away. The process involved hormonal injections followed by doctors retrieving her eggs and inserting the healthiest ones with her husband's sperm. Abby and her husband had been struggling with infertility for 2 years. We both cried, but I unintentionally responded coldly, saying, "This isn't a movie," causing her to cry, which I didn't intend. It was just the truth. I loved her and I still love her, but I struggle with brutal honesty. I am very forthright, and our relationship was built on trust. Sometimes she didn't appreciate how I expressed my feelings, although I meant no harm. Time passed with no news about her process until September, when she texted that she had been facing mental struggles and that she and her husband had decided to begin the procedure in December before Christmas. To provide context, I traveled to a different country to see my family. However, instead of staying for a week or two, I ended up there for an entire month due to being scammed by someone, which is irrelevant. I had not seen Abby for a month, nor had she seen me, which prompted her to run away from home, leaving her husband and staying with her mom for several days to decide whether to pursue life with true love or the life of building a family. When she texted, conveying her choice of the latter, I comforted her, recognizing how difficult that decision must have been, and expressed my wish to be there with her in person. Upon my return, we arranged to meet, and after an hour of ignoring the subject, I asked her, "So what is going to happen?" She admitted that she was in a bad mental state but insisted that the December plan was still in place. Simply being with her felt incredibly soothing, and not addressing my need to hug or kiss her was equally calming. She felt the same way. As December approached, she began her injections, which made her uncomfortable both physically and mentally. We still did not want to part ways. In January, the school organized a ski trip, and Abby was assigned as one of the coordinators. Upon hearing I was coming, she became incredibly excited, and my sole motivation for attending was to spend time with her and ski together. During our texting, we playfully exchanged thoughts about how great it would be if she had her own room close to mine. We both knew I was going to share a room with my friends, though. We fantasized about me sneaking into her room and being intimate. The ski trip lasted only a weekend, and upon arrival, I was pleasantly surprised that Abby had secured a room for herself just 3 rooms away from mine. Incredibly, during both nights, I actually managed to sneak into her room, and we had sexual intercourse while other students slept nearby. It was exhilarating. Beyond the physical intimacy, we both felt something exceptionally special towards one another. I cannot adequately describe it, but even with my limited experience with women compared to her experience with men, we recognized that this connection was truly one in a billion. Following the ski trip, we texted throughout the night expressing our gratitude and love for each other. I did not attend school the next day due to extreme fatigue from skiing and lack of sleep, while she went since it was her job. Later that day, she visited me, and we shared a meal and made love, but we also had a serious conversation about our future. She mentioned that this would be the last time we had sex, as she didn't want me to engage with her while she was officially pregnant, not wanting me to associate that image with our relationship. I understood, but the sadness overwhelmed me, and she felt the same. She wept again, and I held her in bed, and we just lay there. Eventually, she had to leave, and for weeks we exchanged messages about how much we missed each other, which made it even harder to see each other at school. I was unsure whether we had broken up, but I was certain that my feelings for her remained unchanged. Now it has been a month since she last attended school. Her doctor at the clinic has restricted her from working until she feels better, as she experienced bleeding a few times and was afraid it might signal another miscarriage. Currently, we only text, but the energy feels lacking. Our exchanges are quite dry, and we both dislike texting. I visited her twice, where we expressed our love for one another, both of us feeling scared. She loves me and desperately wants to become a mother. While I want her to be happy, I also wish for us to be together. I understand I cannot be a father at 18, which is why she prefers to have children with her husband, who has been pushing for the procedure. Additionally, I should mention that my mother has met Abby multiple times, as Abby has assisted us with moving. They developed a friendship, complicating things further. However, we managed to keep our relationship a secret. I need help with what to do next. I love Abby, I love her deeply, she loves me too. When I am with her, I feel fulfilled and complete. It feels as though I have found the one, you know. I understand the complications involved and how I ended up in this situation, but here I am. I have been struggling with hidden depression lately, and I am not being hyperbolic. I recognize that the word depression is frequently misused when someone is simply feeling sad for a couple of days. I also struggle to sleep at times. As my finals approach, it looks like I might fail them, coming up just shy of the minimum points. I do not know what to do. You may judge Abby for potentially taking advantage of me, but that is simply not accurate. I realize that people my age often act impulsively and may regret their decisions. However, at that time, I was aware of the situation, and I genuinely wanted to be with her. Story 2. After 5 years together, my boyfriend confessed he cheated on me with men throughout my first pregnancy. I couldn't tell you, I disassociated, he said, shattering my trust. Now I grapple with love and betrayal, seeking a way forward. Can I rebuild what he broke? This is excessively long, but I need to start from the beginning. I female ended a toxic on-and-off relationship with my ex-female that lasted for 5 years. We began dating as high school freshmen and officially broke up 1 year after graduation. I cheated several times and she cheated a few times as well. It was just a bad and toxic situation overall. So when we broke up, I felt truly lost. I was extremely codependent on her. I had given up all my friends to be with her. There was only one friend left, and he was a mutual friend between both of us. Honestly, he was more her friend, but I suspect he had a crush on me and his relationship with her was nearing its end. I asked him if he could continue being my friend, and he bluntly told me no because he liked me a lot and genuinely could not be my friend. This is a brief version of his explanation. I was taken aback. I had never had anyone be so open and honest. I always felt he was straightforward and sincere, appearing so mature and sensitive. He was the complete opposite of my ex. I didn't want him to abandon me, and I was attracted to him, so I suggested we talk and see where things went, but to take it slow. I had just come out of a relationship, you know. However, it escalated quickly. We slept together after dating for a month, then moved in together in our third month of dating because the pandemic had just begun and lockdowns were happening. And we were living with our parents and did not want to stay there, so we decided to move in together. We faced financial difficulties, so I got a job. His mother did not like me, but he defended me and made her understand that I was a priority for him and that he would not tolerate her bullying me. Eventually, she worked through her issues with me and we became family. I began to struggle significantly with depression. I don't know, I was just filled with regret for not attending college and wasting so much of my life on my ex. I had awful self-esteem and body dysmorphic issues. Looking back, I should have taken time to work on myself before committing to someone else. Nevertheless, I was trying. It wasn't bad days every day. This was our first year together, which was tumultuous. Then I discovered I was pregnant. I was terrified. I immediately thought he would leave me. I felt like my life was over. I have always been pro-choice, but when I was in that hospital room and they told me I would have to decide soon, I thought about my little brother who I watched die. I couldn't bear the thought of willingly giving my baby to God because of my past trauma. My mother was with me in the hospital when I found out, and we discussed how I didn't want to terminate, but if I were unable to raise my baby, I would give it to someone who could and wanted to. After that, I spoke with my boyfriend. He immediately told me he would not dictate what I should do with my body and that he would support me regardless of my decision. He said he was unsure if he was ready to be a father, but if I had this baby, he would step up and be one, especially because he grew up without a father. He instilled confidence in me that he would embark on this journey with me. I had told him I loved him before, and I truly did, but after this, my love deepened. Call it hormones or whatever you want, but it did. I endured terrible morning sickness. I was constantly hungry and exhausted. I had to quit my job. He was fully financially supporting me. After discovering I was 4 weeks pregnant, I struggled with depression for the following 2 months, but I began to emerge from it once it settled in that my life was changing and it started to feel like it would change for the better. My attitude began to genuinely change. I felt more emotionally in tune with myself and empathetic towards others. It became easier to communicate with my boyfriend and to be more emotionally mindful of how this was affecting him. I did not pressure him on anything and made sure that during disagreements I remained mature and respectful even when he wasn't. My love for him was blossoming. However, I was ignoring red flags. We both smoked marijuana, but I stopped when I found out I was pregnant and didn't feel it was fair to ask him to quit just because I had to. He began to smoke heavily, then started drinking, gradually escalating to finishing an entire bottle of tequila in one night every other night. At times, I felt he was escaping me, but I reassured myself he was just doing his own thing or something. I would simply ignore it. He would only drink at night. Smoking occurred throughout the day, but I had once been in a similar place and felt I had no right to say anything or judge. After the baby was born, it began to trouble me a bit. I lacked confidence in him as my support, so I had my mother staying with us. He despised it, but I was so scared to be alone, and I had all these new responsibilities regarding caring for an infant, my boyfriend, and finding time to feed and take care of myself. She stayed with us for about 3 weeks before I felt ready to manage on my own. It was hard to ask my boyfriend for help, but when I did, he was supportive and considerate. Sometimes I felt like a burden because he could be quite temperamental with me, and I believe that is why I would neglect myself in the process of fully taking care of my baby. But I loved my baby so much, and I loved him even more for giving her to me. He proposed to me 2 weeks after I had my daughter. Of course, I accepted. I knew I didn't want to have a wedding anytime soon with the baby being so new and with our finances being even tighter now that the baby was in the picture. Our relationship felt solid to me. I knew he was the man I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, the man I wanted to create a home and family with. By the time my daughter was 8 months old, I knew I wanted to have another baby. I asked my boyfriend and he agreed to start trying. I realized he thought I was crazy, but he loved our daughter and I believe he was impressed with how well I adapted to being a mother. Heck, even I was impressed with myself. However, there were times when I struggled to be a good girlfriend. Being a mother consumed me. I was completely focused on my daughter. 1 month after my daughter's first birthday, we discovered we were expecting another baby. I was very happy. I was raised with a younger sibling who was 2 years younger than me, and I wanted my children to have that. The second pregnancy took a toll on my body and caused me a lot more stress, particularly because I was also raising and still breastfeeding a toddler. My boyfriend went through his own medical problems during my pregnancy. He had to completely stop drinking and really focus on his health. He successfully quit drinking, which was a process, and he ultimately required surgery 2 weeks after my second baby was born. We have grown significantly together, and we have certainly experienced our ups and downs, with our primary struggle being communication. Nonetheless, I have never doubted his loyalty to me and have always felt he was honest to the point where I felt somewhat lacking. Here is this incredible man who works tirelessly for me and our children, who is so open and honest with me. I have had immense pride and admiration for him, but I struggled to express it. My insecurity about who I am as a person would sometimes hinder me. I viewed him as too good for me. I would compare myself to him and feel unworthy. I was a good mother, and that was all I believed I had to offer. So during moments when I really needed to work through a problem with him, I would freeze up and shut down, terrified that if I opened up at that moment, he would not want me. It was irrational of me, but insecurities can do that. We attempted to get married before my son was born, but something always held me back. I just lacked the confidence that he genuinely wanted me for who I am. I felt that for him, marriage was merely a step to take. Like, oh, we have kids, we love each other, and he needs paperwork, so let's get married. Given how I was raised, I have always viewed marriage as a very serious commitment, and divorce is heavily stigmatized. Now let's fast forward. We are still not married. We have a 3-year-old daughter and a 19-month-old son. I am 25 and my boyfriend is 27. We lost our home and moved in with my mother. It is tough, but it is a last resort until we can purchase our own home. My boyfriend has confessed to me that he would like to go to church and know God. I grew up Christian, so I have no issue with this. I have lost my way with Christ, but am open to finding my way back. We have turned our hearts to Christ and made a commitment to grow in faith together. I told him I am ready to get married and that I want to have God in our relationship. He agrees, and I feel even closer to him. One night we were having a casual date together, and he mentioned he had 2 things to tell me. By the way he became reserved and how his tone filled with nervousness, I immediately sensed something was wrong. My chest tightened and my stomach began to swirl. My first thought was that he cheated, and my second thought was, you're so foolish to think the worst, he would never. He then proceeded to tell me that before we started dating, he had thought he might be interested in men and was experimenting with them. I was shocked, as I never knew he had these feelings or urges. He went on to explain that when we got together and our relationship was rocky in the beginning, he thought we were going to break up and that he had these urges, so he downloaded an app and met up with a transgender person and had sexual relations. He admitted to enjoying it and did it 2 more times. When he wasn't meeting with them, he was on this app messaging other men with explicit content, essentially entertaining other men while we were in a relationship. I asked when it began. He met up with the first person shortly after we found out I was pregnant with our first child. The cheating continued for about a year. He claimed it was merely sex and that he completely disassociated from himself during those encounters. As time passed, he became so riddled with guilt that he began drinking heavily. He couldn't provide me with a clear timeline of when it stopped or any real details, as he insisted he was so dissociated that it felt like it wasn't even him doing it. He said he finally got his lust under control and was able to stop, connecting his shame and fears to his childhood trauma. He acknowledged he never found the appropriate time to tell me but realized he couldn't marry me without me knowing the complete truth. He expressed that he loves me, he wants me, but he understands he has messed up, and it is all incredibly frustrating to me. I love this man, but he has utterly violated my trust. He has manipulated me and gaslighted me. I just don't know what to do or how to feel. He tells me this happened 3 years ago. He tells me he is gay, bisexual curious. I love this man, but is he even the man I love? I never saw him as someone capable of such actions. I never doubted his loyalty to me. I just don't understand how someone can claim to love another person, have a child with them, and propose all while cheating. It doesn't make sense. The complete disregard and lack of respect for me is just astonishing. And why do I not want to leave him? Why? But I don't know how to stay and be truly happy again. I sometimes wish I could just forget. I found out 3 weeks ago. During the first week, we talked a lot about it, and that helped, but it is still raw. It is easier to hide it when he is around. We still live together, he just sleeps in a separate room. I have had a lot of sex with him since finding out. It confuses him that I want to be intimate so soon, but the troubled part of me needs to feel desired. I yearn for that feeling, even though sex alone does not sustain a relationship. He has asked me to engage in anal sex with him. I do not oppose this request, but it is difficult to know. He practically said, "Forget this woman, she cannot provide me what I seek, so I will go find a man to fulfill that for me." Maybe it's not about the sensation, perhaps he just genuinely desired a man, I do not know, but I am offended, and my self-esteem is hurt. My perception of him is now so distorted. I see him as weak and insecure, especially when I think about how he hurt me. But I never perceived him that way before. Even when he clearly had insecurities about his body image, I always felt love and pride for him for being able to show me and share his body despite those insecurities. I want the anger and hurt to dissipate, but I do not know how to process this. I love him, but I do not know how to forgive him. Story 3. I thought I was finally ready to move on when I met Rocky, a 40-year-old who looked just like Peter. "Are you married?" I asked. "No," he said, but it wasn't long before I found out the truth: he had a wife. Now I'm left questioning everything and hoping I'm not pregnant. What went wrong? I, 33 years old female, have been using dating applications intermittently for several years. Last year I casually dated Peter, 31 years old male, while he was visiting my country. Shortly after our time together, he went to another country. We maintained contact for a month while he was away before he returned to his home country. I became infatuated with him, but his actions gradually made me realize he was not what I needed, so I asked him to stop. He called me complicated for wanting him to communicate better. I had expressed that there were things bothering me and that he had changed since our time together. I wanted to become something more, yet he neither confirmed nor denied it, just strung me along, and I allowed it until I put an end to it. After that, I went no contact. During this period, I saw other people, traveled, and occasionally experienced depressive episodes, questioning why it was him or me. Then something traumatic occurred and I had to move to a new town, starting over from scratch. I lost a significant amount of savings and my travel plans were put on hold. I stopped dating for several months after the move, deleted all applications, and then he sent me a message. 9 months after he broke the no-contact rule, the day after Christmas, he informed me that he was back in my country and town where we first met. I could only assume he had sent that message among many others he encountered while visiting my country, treating it as a spam message. He again played games instead of being direct, apologizing, or providing any meaningful words. I had a panic attack on the spot. I replied days later and concluded the conversation by telling him not to contact me. But deep down, all I wanted was for him to express that he missed me and wanted to see me. As New Year's approached, I re-downloaded Tinder, went on a couple of dates, and then encountered a man named Rocky, who is 40 years old and closely resembles Peter, another tourist. I typically date for long-term relationships and avoid polyamory, consensual non-monogamy, open relationships, and short-term flings. I was still figuring things out, but he had those tags on his profile. Since my libido had been high since Peter reached out, I swiped right on Rocky. We matched, and moments later, he immediately asked about my plans for the night. I was busy but could potentially meet him the following day. He tried to be coy about the meeting, but I was direct and asked him to clarify what he wanted from it. Looking for a hookup was what I wanted from him after 7 months of complete celibacy. When I date, there is no intimacy or physical touch until exclusivity is confirmed. However, I did not find Rocky appealing enough for anything more, especially after Peter and their physical similarities. I messaged him the next night after I was free, but he took some time to respond, making it later than I preferred. He thought I was heading straight to his hotel, but I had asked him to meet beforehand and he had agreed. I told him where and at what time, mentioning that I was on my way. He requested my phone number and then asked me to message him. He incorrectly provided me with his number and appeared to delete his Tinder profile, disappearing afterward. 5 minutes passed and I had already started walking away from the meeting point when he messaged me. The contact's name was different from his Tinder profile. I questioned him about both inconsistencies and he provided some excuse. I was uneasy about the exchange but dressed up and felt very attracted to him as everyone who passed by stared at me on the street. He was still going to make me wait because he was not yet out of the hotel and would take another 20 minutes to pick me up. He called me, assuring me he was not a catfish, and eventually arrived. I was shocked and felt cold when I saw him as he looked a lot like Peter, but there was no spark. His voice was deep but lacked the accent they really seemed to like, or was my mind playing tricks? We took a cab to avoid wasting more time and proceeded straight to his hotel. He kept talking about himself and attempted to engage in small talk, but I remained distant with short answers. Once we reached his hotel, he expected me to get out first, but I stayed seated, prompting him to realize he needed to open the door. He apologized and quickly exited to do so. As we walked through the lobby, I anticipated security stopping me to request identification or payment for visiting. Fortunately, that did not happen. On our way to his room, he made a joke about having to drag an elderly uncle out of a room, but it was no joke. His uncle was asleep in one of the beds. Rocky proceeded to wake him up, prompting me to exit the room and ask him to follow me to talk. I explained that this situation was unacceptable, first because he was elderly and it was unfair for him to have to leave at such a late hour, and secondly because Rocky had claimed he could host because we were hooking up. He asked if I wanted to go elsewhere, to which I agreed, but suggested we inquire about another room as that would make things easier. We returned to the lobby where they had a room available. However, he did not have a card on file despite having claimed that he did earlier. The room was in his uncle's name and the card he tried using did not go through. He mentioned having more cards in the room, so on the way back I stopped him, saying, "There are too many bad things happening right now. Is there more family in the hotel?" He said no. I asked, "Are you married?" He replied no. I then asked, "Are you polyamorous and partnered?" He said no again. I added that if the card did not go through, I was calling it a night as I had already waited too long and he resembled my much younger ex. I didn't know if that was a good or bad thing, but I noted that he had great taste as I presumed my ex must be attractive. He apologized for the waiting and the various hiccups and agreed there was an issue with the card. He would put me in a cab. He returned and the card went through this time. He glanced at my identification when I handed it back, and we proceeded to the room. While talking, he mentioned many details that did not add up, including scars on his body, accidents, dates, and descriptions of injuries and what he was doing at those times. I dislike smokers, but he had a lighter and a vape. He admitted to using marijuana and had a Stanley cup full of beer that he had been drinking all day. By that point, I was already in the room when all of this came to light. I asked him to shower before anything and he obliged. We pleasured each other, showered together several times between sessions, used every towel and sheet available in the room and stayed awake throughout the night resting in each other's arms. We conversed, kissed, caressed, and laughed during breaks, and when cuddling we began the cycle anew. He was there to fulfill my every desire until I reached satisfaction multiple times. In the morning, after a bit of sleep while lying next to him, already sore and tired, he grabbed his phone and read texts from his uncle and others. He was tracking a woman's location. When I woke, he informed me that his uncle had texted him angrily about still possessing the card he paid for the room with and that he couldn't get breakfast. I got up, showered, dressed, and prepared to leave. Every part of my body ached. He handed me money for my taxi, which made me feel very uncomfortable, and he accompanied me out through the lobby. I decided to take the bus instead, passing by. I didn't say much other than urging him to quickly deliver the card to his uncle since he needed food. He kissed me on the lips as a goodbye and told me to text him while I hurriedly ran across the street. I informed my friend, who had kept track of my location and knew my whereabouts all night. She found him and his wife of 8 years on social media. Most of the things he said were lies, half-truths, and omissions. I didn't respond, but he reactivated his Tinder account that same day as he appeared in my matches. Initially, he mentioned he was leaving the following weekend after Valentine's Day. I sent him a message in the afternoon on Valentine's Day, as he hadn't reached out to me either, and had changed his profile to looking for new friends days before I messaged him. I received a very rude response back until the evening and was blocked immediately. On Tinder, his location updated to reflect where his home country would be. I called him out on the platform, and hours later he responded, claiming he hadn't said anything and that it was his uncle who deleted everything out of jealousy, grabbing his phone while he was in the shower. I told him I knew the truth and that there was no point in lying to me. I did not mention marriage but referenced whether she knew. He apologized for the drama and assured me he was clean, stating it was his uncle who messaged and deleted the texts. I hope I am not pregnant or ill. It was my week off the birth control pill. I had never been unprotected with anyone before him and do not understand why I felt inclined to do so after our first session. I am filled with shame, anger, sadness, and intrigue for his wife, who is incredibly beautiful. I cannot comprehend how someone like her could permit something like this. I do not believe they are polyamorous or engaged in consensual non-monogamy. I am now questioning everything, and the shame of making choices I did when all the warning signs were present is tormenting me. The guilt of enjoying his company and everything that transpired in that room, which no man before has done for me, weighs even heavier. I apologize, M, if you are unaware of him. You do not deserve this. Summary, I 33 years old female had a sexual encounter with a man 40 years old male who denied being married, only to later discover he has been for 8 years.